Caitlin, and I'm back to speaking to an empty room. Here we are. Well, at least we got some Jesus in here. And luckily, we got somebody in the last room left an exit marker. So I got to write the lesson on the board. We've got lovely Job and the bigger picture. Who's ready to learn some stuff. And also, I feel like I have to mention this, that instead of speaking to a hallway, last time I was in a room, I got to speak to a hallway, and it was like an empty wall. Instead, I got a lovely seating area. So people can stop and sit down and listen to me talk. And the thing I'll have yet to discover, that one question, is whether or not they can actually hear me. And if they can hear me, just crazily speaking to myself. But I don't know what I'm hoping for, whether or not they hear the word of Jesus, or I sit in a room by myself and talk. So I'm feeling like there's no right answer to that question. But let's go ahead and begin to this lovely lesson. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with a prayer. All right, dear Jesus, I pray that you'll just fill this room with your spirit and just fill me, Lord, with your presence, Lord, and just help me to know you. Help me to speak through you, Lord, and I pray that you'll just fill this room and just help me to just understand what I'm talking about and being able to just really understand and get into this I'm speaking to you. Even though there's not really anyone in this room, I pray that you'll just help me to focus on you in this. Amen. So shall we go ahead and begin? Let's get in words on Jesus. Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and start with a little story about me. So when I was in high school, which makes me realize how young I really am, when I was a senior, we had these college counselors, and they would tell us all the things that we have to do before we graduated. They would tell us, like, oh, you have to log so many volunteer hours, you have to use like some driving certificate and a CPR certificate. We had to graduate or we had to apply to so many colleges and then send them our acceptance letters to show that we were going to college. And it was just like their rule after rule and thing after thing they would make us do, and we'd get so tired. Me and my friends, we would just talk about it and like, why do they have so much things that we have to do? Why is it one thing after another? I mean, we've done all the courses. We checked off the boxes. We took 4 math credits. We took so many histories. We did all that. But we'd be upset because there was just thing after thing after that. It's like, after that, we did all this. We just went through 4 years of this high school. Now there's more things that we have to do. And we would be over here and we would blame our college counselors, the people who would be telling this to us. They would say all the things and we'd be mad at them. We're like, why are you making us do all these things? We've done the work. Why are you making us do more things? And we'd be mad at them. But the problem was, it wasn't their fault. We were just blaming our college counselors because it was convenient. Because technically, it was the district that would make certain districts and all the schools in the area follow all of these requirements. They'd say every school in this district, they have to follow the requirements. I honestly don't know who in the government or how it all works and who makes the rules. All I know is it's just someone higher up, somewhere up in the district. I really didn't pay attention in government. I should have. But at least we're here and I get to talk about the Bible because that's what's important. But the problem was we were blaming the wrong person. We couldn't just blame our college counselors because they were convenient, because they were right there. We can't just say, oh, it's their fault. It was technically the district who was making the problems. They were the ones making the rules. And I think today what I'm really wanting to acknowledge is, who are we supposed to be blaming? Who's at fault? So often I think whenever we're walking through things and really bad things happen, because none of our lives are perfect. I know that, and if you're saying that your life is perfect, well, you're wrong. But when we start walking through things, whether it's anxiety or it's just we lose someone that we love, and just thing after thing happens, and just bad things, generally speaking, we start blaming the wrong person. We end up blaming God. We end up blaming ourselves. And the problem is, it's not God's fault. God isn't doing this to us. The same thing with ourselves. We can't just be blaming ourselves for every bad thing that happens to us because it's not always our fault either. And I think today what I'm just really wanting to look at is, who are we blaming? And just basically the 3 lies that we come to, and how we're blaming the wrong people, that we are believing the wrong lies about when everything is just going wrong. Who are we looking at? Who's at fault? And that's what I'm really wanting to come today. And so, like I said before, we're going to be going into Job, and I'm going to have y'all go ahead and open up your Bibles to Job 1, 6 through 12, and that's going to be kind of the main passage. So I feel like in this passage, you'll notice, or like in all of Job, I just kind of give you a background. Job is described as a really good guy. He's, and like basically the first verse, he's described as blameless and right with God. So it's not like we're talking about some really bad person who's made so many mistakes, mistake after mistake, and now he's going through all these trials. He's a good person. And then he starts losing everything. And we'll see throughout like the chapters, and there's a lot of chapters. Job is 42 chapters long. We see Job lose everything. His wife becomes sick, his children become sick and die. He loses everything. He loses his home, he becomes sick. And just, it doesn't stop for him. And so I think in this chapter that I just had you open up to, in Job 1, 6 through 12, we kind of see the bigger picture of what's going on. Why is this happening? Who's at fault? Who are we to blame? So let's go ahead and read those few verses so we can kind of figure out what is going on. Why does Job, this good guy, who's just blameless, as he's described multiple times, suddenly start going through all of this? So here, we're kind of up in heaven, and it's between God and Satan speaking. So I'll go ahead and start here in verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. So first we see that Satan is coming to God, which I'll bring up later. The Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." So he's just roaming about, he's looking at everything, Satan. And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man?" So we even see again, God is saying that Job is blameless. It's not just that Job is assuming this or his friends are saying this, God says this about Job. And he fears God and turns away from evil. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for no reason?" So Satan basically believes that Job has had it pretty good. He's got a good family, he's got a good job, he's got a good home. And he's worshiping God because everything is going right for him. And so he's saying that you have blessed the work of his hands and his possessions and have increased the land. I missed verse 10, and it said first that have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side, and saying again that he had blessed everything. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. So we see that Satan's basically saying, it's like, if everything just starts going badly, Job will turn on you. And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold all that he has in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand." So Satan went from the presence of the Lord. And so sometimes you can look at that and you might be confused and be like, is God like suddenly believing, oh, you must be right? Because we know that God knows everything. So that's not necessarily the case. We already know that God is all-knowing. But in this case, he's not doing this because he doesn't know whether Job will stay. He's doing this because Satan does not believe this. And Satan, we know this, he's not going to stop. He's going to keep coming after us over and over and over, and he's not going to stop. And if he believes that he can get to you, he's going to try to take everything from you. And I'll kind of just go back to that later. But I feel like the first lie that we kind of come up to, and after seeing all of this, that this kind of like looks at, is the belief that it's all God's fault, that God is doing this to us. So easy, like I said before, that it's convenient that when something bad happens to us, when we lose somebody, when we lose our jobs, when we start getting anxiety and depression, and we start falling even in maybe addiction, we start saying, you did this, God, you have control over everything, so you must be doing this to us. And it's our natural response to hate God. It's our natural response to be like, this is you that is doing this because God's in front of us. We're taught that God does exist, that he created everything, so naturally we assume he must be doing this to us. And we even see first how Job's wife responds. In Job 2 verse 9, she says, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? curse God and die. Even Job's wife says that this must be because of God. But we need to realize that we need to know who it is that is at fault. We can't just be blaming God after everything that goes wrong. We need to realize who is doing this to us. And we see this, we can realize this, because at the beginning of this, God is sitting here, and all the sons came to present themselves. And Satan was one of them. He comes up to the God. He comes to God. God didn't come up to Satan and be like, hey, come torment Job. No, Satan comes to God, and he's like, and whenever he's kind of saying he went throughout all the earth, he's like coming to God, and he's like, hey, I looked everywhere. I'm looking for someone. He's wanting to torment someone. And we're realizing that this is not because God just thought, hey, I'm going to go up to Satan and have him torture someone for me. No, he went to God. We have to realize that this isn't just God's fault. God isn't torturing us. God didn't come and do this to us. Satan, our enemy, has done this to us. He is the one who is tormenting us. He is the one who is just attacking us. And we have to learn to realize that first, that this is not God's fault, that God is not doing this to us because he loves us. We have to know who to blame, and that first lie is, it is not God. It is not God's fault. Our enemy is doing this to us. And I think it is so important to realize this, because when Moses, who wrote Job, God didn't just tell Moses, just throw this in there. Hey, just throw this in there whenever you get a chance, whether it's the middle or the end or the beginning, I don't care. They put it at the beginning for a reason. They put it this very first little chapter after we see kind of the background of Job, before everything bad happens, so we can see what is happening. So we can know who is doing this to Job. We're not just seeing all the bad things happen to Job and they'd be like, who's doing this? No, we see that first. We see that that Satan is coming to God before Job is attacked. And the second lie is we believe that it's our fault. And I feel like this one is just so toxic and it's so painful, because it is also another natural response to blame ourselves, that whenever bad things happen to us, when we struggle with anxiety or depression or addictions, we believe that it must be our fault. It's because we are doing something wrong. And we see this when one of Job's friends come up to him. He says, consider now, and this is in Job 4, verse 7, 8, how his friends respond and saying that it must be Job's fault. He says, consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. So his friend is basically saying to him, he can't justify that there's any possible way that this is this is just happening to Job because Job has been so good and perfect. And we see that Job was actually blameless, but it can be easy to just think that it's because we're doing something wrong, that bad things wouldn't just happen to us if we were doing everything right. But we know this is wrong, because not only does Job and all his friends and Moses, or whenever he was writing this, saying that Job was blameless and upright, God says this to Satan. God says, no, Job is a blameless and upright man. He is not like any other. He fears God and turns away from evil. So we see this clearly, that even God looks at Job as a good person. And this isn't just how he's perceived or how his friends perceive him. God knows everything. God knows what we're doing when no one is watching. But he looked at Job and said, Job is blameless. So we can clearly see through that this isn't because Job did something wrong. But again, this is who is at fault. This is the enemy that is doing this to us. And even though this may be spiritual warfare, this is spiritual warfare. Not that it is. That still doesn't change things. That doesn't make it Job's fault. And I feel like that's something that we struggle with today. And that whenever we're walking through things, we're afraid to say something. Like, we're afraid to say, I feel like I am going through some spiritual warfare. I feel like I am spiritually struggling, that I am being attacked by Satan. We're afraid to say these things because we believe suddenly that means that we did something wrong. We believe that that's because I was not praying enough, I was not reading the Bible or going to church, that I must have not been having enough faith in God. And so often we start thinking it through the cycles of this, where we say it must be because of us, it must be because we did something wrong, and it's not. And I feel like that is something that so many people in this room, or not really none in this room, they're believing this lie, that this anxiety that they're struggling with, this depression, these addictions, these suicidal thoughts, anything through all those things, every battle that they have walked through, that must be because they did something wrong. And I even believe this when I was walking through so much pain and anxiety. I had constant panic attacks, even when I was coming to church. I'd come to the room and I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe. I'd walk into a church building and I couldn't breathe, and I was like, God, I don't understand this. It must be because I am doing something wrong. Because no good person would be walking through this, or that's what I believed. No person who was genuinely trusting God, but suddenly having panic attacks or anxiety and depression. They would not walk through that. That I would not walk through that if I wasn't doing something wrong. And the thing is, we have to realize it is not our fault. This anxiety is not just our fault. It is not just this depression and these addictions and this pain that keeps hurting us. It's not all our fault. It's not because we were not good enough. It is not because we weren't reading the Bible or praying enough or going to church. It is because He was attacking to us. He was attacking us. He was causing a war within us. And we have to realize that. We have to realize who is at fault. And I feel like that is something that in this room this is going to break off of you, and you're going to finally realize that this is not because of you. This is not because of you. And this is what brings us into our third point. We believe this lie that the battle revolves around us. That we're going through this, that it's all because of us. All we see is that I was doing this, and then suddenly this happened. Suddenly I lost this, and I started struggling. I was walking here, and then all we see is what's happening right in front of us. Which is why we look at ourselves, and then we look at God, and why those are the first two things that we typically go to blame. But the thing is, it is bigger than us. Just like I said at the beginning of this chapter, we see that this is between Satan and God speaking. It begins with this in the heavens. That is so much bigger than us. And we have to see the bigger picture. Because we see here, right here, and so when Satan is questioning God, he says, does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all he has on every side? So again, we see that this is not some test that God has placed before us to torment us. He's not just pulling our strings and saying, oh, will they mess up if I do this? Will they mess up if I do this? Will they stop trusting me if I do this? But they realize that it is because Satan believes the lie. That Satan believes that he can get to us if he suddenly throws this in front of us. It's not that God doubted us. God knows everything. He knows how we'll react to every situation. He loves us and he helps us. And we see here another verse here in 1 Corinthians 10:13, how we really see that God genuinely does care about us. And God will always provide a way for us to choose him if we would like. We see that God is faithful and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it. And this is some temptation, but it's the same with everything. He will not put something in front of us that we cannot handle. He will not place a battle before us that we are not prepared for. He will always provide a way that will help us to escape. He will always be there for us and ready for us to hold on to. But we're walking through this because Satan doubted us. He looked at us and said that if he throws these things in front of us, we will fail, we will stumble. And that's the problem. Satan believes that he can hold us down. He believes that we are weak and that if we suddenly walk through this, we will suddenly turn on God. And then what we have to do is we have to declare it out loud, the truth, that Does not matter what you do to me. It does not matter what you take away from me. I will never stop trusting God. I will never stop serving God. You can take everything away from me, but you cannot touch me. I am a child of God and I belong to Him. I will follow Him no matter what you do to me. We have to declare that out loud to Him. Because once He realizes He cannot touch us, once He realizes that this battle is over, when Jesus died on that cross for our sins, it was once and for all. We don't have to be facing this battle between us and God. It is finished, it is done, and we just say, no, I choose Him, you cannot touch me. He will realize there's nothing that he can do, and he will back away. He will see that he is lost. And that is why we have to declare it out loud. Because we have to let Him know. We have to tell Him that and give Him no more reason to torment us. Because if He sees that, He'll stop. And that is why we have to realize who's at fault. We have to stop blaming the wrong people. We have to see the bigger picture. We cannot look at God and blame Him, because that's not going to make it stop, because God is not doing this to us. We cannot blame ourselves and say that this is all our fault, that this is all because I was doing something wrong, because that is not going to make it stop. We have to blame Him. We have to look at Him and say, you did this to me. You did this to me. And now I wake up every day for myself and I realize I know who did this to me, and for every year that He stole back from me, that He stole from me and He took away from me, I'm going to fight it back, and I'm going to get Him back for all those years that He took from me. We have to know who's at fault. We have to know who to blame, because if we start blaming the wrong people, if we start blaming ourselves when it's not because we did something wrong, when we start blaming God when He's not doing this to us, it will not stop, because Satan's going to keep realizing that every time he throws something in front of us, he keeps winning. Your faith gets a little weaker. You start to struggle a little more and you start doubting God. And Satan's going to keep throwing all these things in front of us because he realizes he's getting to us. We're beginning to doubt God. So he doesn't stop. He keeps pulling us closer and closer. But if we declare it out loud that saying, no, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. We have to declare that out loud. And then it'll stop. We have to make sure that He knows that He cannot touch us. He cannot get to us. We have to know who is at fault. So I thank you for listening to this. And I just thank you for everyone in this room. We'll go ahead and close our eyes and pray. Dear God, I just thank you for this another good day. And maybe someone in the hallway heard what I'm saying, or maybe the person next to us in the room, in the study hall next to us, heard us. But either way, it's okay. I just pray that this was for better, just for the better of everyone. I pray that you'll just be with me, Lord, and just be with this room and fill this room with your spirit. So maybe the people that come in the room after will also feel your presence, Lord. So thank you for everything. Just thank you for another good day. Amen. There you go.